So, hello and welcome to the YouTube channel for the Tarot Association. My name is Marcus Katz. I'm the author and co-author with Charlie Goodwin of Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot and a host of other books regarding tarot, divination, the Lenormand cards and the Western esoteric initiatory system. I'd like to present this very unscripted, impromptu video to explain to you a little bit about the Waite-Smith Tarot and in particular something that is called the Hill of Heart's Desire. And I'd like to show you in a brief moment the little discovery or intriguing synchronicity that we've found that connects Pamela Colman Smith and the Waite deck, or the Waite-Smith deck properly called, and the Thoth deck of Frida Harris, Lady Frida Harris and Aleister Crowley. There's a weird synchronicity that I'd love to share with you, and it's something that I've been trying to find the primary source for over 10 years, and it recently came into our hands, so I'd like to share that with you as well. If you find this of interest, please subscribe to the channel, and we will have a lot more videos in the coming months and years. And also please join the Tarot Association, where we share a lot of course material and original unique material regarding tarot and divination and the Western esoteric initiatory system as well. So I've selected these particular cards out of the Waite-Smith deck for one particular reason. These are not the only cards that have this particular theme to them, but these are some that I think demonstrate the idea that we're going to be discussing, which is that there is a internal landscape, Pamela Colman Smith's own internal landscape, written into these cards, and it is a dream version or an idealized version of a place called Winchelsea, which is where she was staying in, probably in Tower Cottage, or she was staying nearby in with Ellen Terry, who she was visiting at the time that she was actually drawing these cards. Now, we covered this in Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot, and I'm going to be referring in particular to the Italian version of that in a moment, just because it's a larger version of the images that I want to discuss. What this has to do with practical tarot, well, it helps us weave a narrative in a more confident manner when we're doing an actual reading, because we know that all of these cards are talking about the same place, much like in a dream, where we have our own internal dream landscape. For example, there might be a particular church that is always dreamt of in relationship to another group of buildings or a marketplace that sometimes you might dream about, and that always seems to be somewhere close to the church and not close to somewhere else that you often dream about. And we do build up these internal landscapes, and when we're doing a tarot reading, we are reading through variations of the same landscape, as I hope to demonstrate. So we're going to briefly look at these cards, and you'll see this card here in the background. Can you see this little tower? And there's a gate. There's a tower gate here and a road leading out of it. And even though Pamela Colman Smith didn't colour the cards herself, you can see that there's a red tiled building next to the red tiled tower in the background of this card. Now, what we're going to be doing is looking at these backgrounds and showing something quite interesting about them. Because if we take the next card, you'll see that there is a building on the top of this hill and there's a river down the bottom. So forget the main thrust of the card, let's just take a look in the background. And there's a sort of copse of trees and this winding river. Now, these are actually coastal rivers, and we can sort of tell this, I guess, to some extent because there's a ship heading out possibly downriver or to the coast on this particular card, for example, the Death card. And we know that Pamela Common-Smith was very much into pirates, and in fact she later moved down to the coast, even more on the coast than she was before, down to the Lizard in England, an area very coastal, rocky, very particular landscape as well, which will come in useful in a moment. So we have the ships in the background here, the pirate ship, and here again we see this marshy area that's by the coast, and we can see these red towers in the background, but notice that they're on the top of a hill. It's almost like they're built into the hill, and that will come in later. And then again we have the same landscape, the same sorts of buildings in the background here, which we can see very clearly. And this person is in one of those buildings looking down. You'll see that there's a furrowed field down there, the same furrowed field that we see on the Knight of Pentacles. And again, it's a particular coastline that we can see, slightly hilly at the back there, but he's on a raised building. Similarly here, we have the buildings in the background, same sort of buildings. Again, a river, the bridge here, and a sort of very square crenellated castle-like building there. Here we can see that coastline standing on the hill there. We can see the ships actually now leaving port and heading out. Again, I know I'm labouring a point now, and I'm hoping that this is the point. We can see the same square red tiled building. Same very similar cottage-like building on a slight incline with the trees behind it on the Two of Cups. And then after the Two of Cups have gone through all of the situations of the cups, we can see the river very clearly again, and the cottage again that they were just dreaming about when they first set up the relationship in this card. Now we can see that that homestead is very clear in the background. Next to the river again. Notice again the tower, the promontory, and the bridge here, very particular bridge. Notice as well the castle-like objects up here. We'll come back to those in a second. They're built into an almost sort of anchor sort of shape in this window. Similarly, here's the chariot. He's actually leaving over the river or moat that is around this crenellated and castle-like town in the background. Same town here in the background. Again, another of the ships that we see. Same buildings. Particular line of coastline. This is more close to the Lizard, actually, when we remove the Queen of Cups out of that picture and look at the landscape that is likely behind that. That's a very particular part of the landscape. Again, this sort of marshy landscape here. The eclipse here actually dates this because Pamela Common-Smith was at Small Hythe Cottage, Tenterden, which is right next to Winchelsea, and Ellen Terry, the famous actress who she was friends with, she was likely babysitting for her over a period of about 5 months, and that was literally the only place that could have seen that eclipse because the sky was clear. And strangely enough, there's a newspaper record actually stating that the only place that that could be seen was Tenterden itself. And that happened during the 1909 period that Pamela was actually drawing this. So she likely saw the eclipse. But notice this marshy sort of background again. Again, coastal marshy background. Same promontory, same thing, same river, and so forth. Now, finally we come to this card, which has the key to the rest of them. Ironically, the Tree of Life is very obvious here, but similarly is this arch and this coat of arms here, which is a crenellated castle and a ship and a stylized, let's see if I can get more light on there, those three sort of flag-like things. But notice that it's a castellated ship, that it's the crenellations, the sort of up and down wall, the defensive part of a castle, and it's a ship as well, so it's like a castle on a ship. But that's really, really important. I know people try and make a lot of this weird thing down here and seem to think that it's A.E. Waite's signature or something odd that's happening down here. But the really obvious thing that people had missed is the actual coat of arms that is written into the card itself. I also like to think on this card that this is the young fool with his dog as yet set out on his journey, because this is the Ten of Pentacles. It's the very lowest material Malkuth in a seer on the Tree of Life. It's the very bottom, most material part, and I like to think that there's a little clue. This child is looking out, say, I am spirit, and here's my dog, which is faith, and I'm going to go on my journey all the way back to spirit and then back again into the material. So we really get a representation of as above, so below in this card. But it was this that really gives us the clue, because when we come to take a look at Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot, we've discussed this in detail, and I've also linked below in the YouTube thing it shows how much I use YouTube. The YouTube thing, I mean the comments down below, this is all part of one landscape. It's part of what Pamela called the Hill of Heart's Desire, an idea she got from Yeats. And the Hill of Heart's Desire is the place you really truly are yourself, that you want to exist in. And Pamela had dreamt this place. She'd actually illustrated it, and I'm just going to refer to the Italian version of Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot. And this particular image here. And this is about the blind poet who we see here, and Pamela illustrated this landscape, and the link that I'll give below goes into this landscape even more. And it's a very particular landscape, and it is called the Hill of Heart's Desire. And it's basically Pamela's idealised version of Winchelsea. We can see very clearly, or when you have a look at the other video, or if you have the book, let's have a look, we can see that there's a town built on a promontory, there's a coastal area with ships in the background, and we can even see something coming out of the gatehouse of this particular place. In fact, we can even see in this image, which was painted in 1903, 6 years before she did the tarot, a young couple in the middle of the picture looking down to a cottage by the trees, which we see on both the 2 and the 10 of Cups. In fact, we can see a lot of the tarot cards already prefigured in this illustration, showing that indeed Pamela's tarot is one landscape, a point that we keep making. And in 1903 she also painted or drew another picture, and we can see here, notice this gatehouse with the road leading up to it and these particular buildings, and there's an interesting sort of strange like oval building. There's an archway here as well that we see on the 10 of Pentacles, and 2 particular church towers. There's 2 churches, one square, one more of a turret type tower, and these are all Winchelsea. Now this is Small Hythe Cottage in Tenterden, next to Winchelsea. It's only a very small area. This is where Pamela was staying with Ellen Terry at the time of the work. And there we have Pamela Coleman Smith, just looking off pictures, and I think that's Ellen Terry's grandson Teddy, and Ellen Terry herself, taken at the time that she was working on the deck. We managed to find an album that actually had 1909 written on it, but again the landscape was pictured by Pamela in lots of other pictures. We can see the ship in the distance here. She was just fascinated and drawn to Winchelsea for its sort of shipping connections, its landscape, its history, and place she was staying, which she actually drew here up to that tower and the archway, and you can see there that's a picture, a photograph actually taken stood looking in the same place there. You can't quite see the hill in this picture, but it's there. And here, down here, is that gatehouse that we keep seeing in several of the tarot cards. Again, it's an idealised, dream-like version of Tenterden, but there it is. Sorry, of Winchelsea. And again, in the book, we have photos. There's the oval building that we see. It was actually a sort of townhouse or a waterhouse or something. I think it was some sort of waterhouse. And more importantly, the flag of Winchelsea, which is a ship, a crenellated ship, a castle-like ship with the 3 lions on it, which Pamela has turned into the 3 sort of flags. But that was the well-known, to the people who lived there at least, coat of arms or mascot of Winchelsea itself. It was one of the 5 port towns before it got totally flooded out, and it's built on a promontory that overlooks a rather marshy part that leads to the sea, and that's exactly what Pamela has constantly painted in her day. And when we were there and I was taking photographs, I saw a nice arched window that I wanted to take a photo of, just in case I could refer it back to the cards. It also had the the Winchelsea coat of arms on it, but unfortunately, while I was taking the photo, literally as I took the photo, a couple of people walked into the shot, so I had to take it again. And it wasn't until later that I actually realised that I had taken almost the exact same picture of the 5 of Pentacles. It was a really weird experience when I was looking at the photographs after we got back from that particular research trip. So I hope in that I've demonstrated that the deck itself is a literalized, spiritualized almost landscape of one particular place. Now, Winchelsea was very well known to a sort of a clique of artists. I think Millhouse painted a famous painting of the tomb in Winchelsea Church, which is exactly the same tomb that we see on the 6 of Swords, the 4 of Swords perhaps. I always get those 2 cards confused even in my own head. But that particular tomb is, let me see if I can find it. I said these would be unscripted, but yeah, there we go, the 4 of Swords. And this particular tomb, which was also painted by Millhouse, is actually in Winchelsea Church. This part here is on the floor of the church, just in front of this, and there is a stained glass work of the Annunciation up slightly to the left of the tomb in the church, with Peace on Earth written on it, which Pamela has written in the Latin Pax in this particular piece of stained glass work. So what we're seeing with the tarot is shuffling. Every time we shuffle it, we're making another dream of it. We're making another dream of an idealized singular landscape, which is our life, which is a metaphor for our life. It is one landscape that may appear fragmented, disconnected. We're not always sure of the connections between one bit of our history and another bit of our history, or things we do in the future, but nonetheless, underneath it all is one enduring, everlasting day, one landscape, one wholeness of being that we are seeing from a separatist perspective, because we identify as a self and we see the world outside. But underneath everything, I think Pamela is giving us a nice demonstration in having this consistent yet dreamlike, fragmentary landscape that is 78 views of the same landscape, 78 views of our own life. Now here's the interesting connection and the synchronicity, and the thing that I've been looking for over 10 years. There's a book also about Winchelsea called Winchelsea A Legend, and it has a proper map of Winchelsea. You can see the coastline again. You can see the Tower Gate and everything else that we can see and have seen in Pamela's cards here. And inside, this book was published in, let's find the publication date, 1926. So this is from 1926, and so that dates it sort of 16, 17 years after Pamela had Pamela had drawn the deck while staying in Winchelsea. So this was about 16 years afterwards, and Pamela had probably moved on by then. She'd sort of disappeared off everyone's radars because she'd converted to Catholicism, and people said she was being very boring because obviously she was being fully immersed in her Catholic faith. So this book was written 16 years later by someone who was staying in Winchelsea. In fact, they had a cottage in Winchelsea itself, and you'll notice that there are some, if I can do this without spoilers just at the moment anyway, oops, there we go. So there's some incredible illustrations. You'll notice the river again leading out to the sea, the particular trees. It's a very pastoral view. And this is a story, a legend of Winchelsea. It's called Winchelsea A Legend, and it's a strange sort of hybrid story of, I think, Dionysus coming to Winchelsea and falling in love with the flower maiden of Winchelsea. It says, already the earth was blossoming with wild wood violets, pale passionless primroses and curling green lords and ladies. The fresh breeze fluttered up over the yellow of the cowslips, orange darted. The daffodils were trumpeting full floods of life to pregnant fruit trees bound in winter lichen. Before the god the maiden knelt, her peace and stillness leaving her, and as she worshipped cried she, O glorious one, this loveliness is thine, it flows from thee. Art thou the sun? And Dionysus stooped and kissed her. So, this wonderful picture. But notice in the background again, that particular promontory, that coastline. I mean, this book is called Winchelsea, so we know it's Winchelsea, but you know, we recognise this from Pamela's drawings, of course, from the Queen of Cups in this particular case. You have a few other pictures in here. This is the 1926 original that I was after for 10 years, and it doesn't come up for auction often, but it did recently and we managed to get hold of it. You'll notice again this landscape in the background, very familiar to a lot of Pamela's drawings. So we can see the connection then. So this book is called Winchelsea A Legend, and finally we can see exactly the same. We have that Tower Gate with Tower Cottage, which is right behind it, which was owned by Ellen Terry. The same sort of houses and the red roofs, which you can see if you go to Winchelsea. And these are very stylized pictures. But here's the weird connection. Here's the most incredible synchronicity of the tarot. Look who this book was painted by. This is by Frida Harris. Frida Harris, who painted the Thoth tarot with Aleister Crowley sometime later. So Frida Harris had a cottage. Lady Frida Harris, her husband and herself, owned a cottage in Winchelsea. Now, how much they knew about Pamela, how much she knew that Pamela was there, I don't know. I actually don't know. But it is just the most remarkable thing, because to some extent, if in an alternate universe Arthur Edward Waite had contacted Frida Harris to draw a tarot deck, then it would have looked probably more like this than the Thoth deck. And so we can see that different sensibility of the artist. Actually, for Crowley, she designed very theosophical, very scientific, very thelemic, very abstract images using projective geometry, which she was studying. But if perhaps Waite had have contacted her a lot earlier on, then we might have ended up with the tarot looking something similar to this, particularly if she was staying in Winchelsea, as Pamela did when she actually painted it. So I just thought that was a really incredible synchronicity. It builds on this idea that the tarot cards are a 78 snapshots of a place in time, in space, but also abstracted into a Hill of Heart's desire, our own lives. So I hope that brings us full circle to the connection between Pamela Coleman-Smith, Frida Harris and Winchelsea. For more information and for more photos, please see, where did I just put it? Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot. Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot. If you've not already got a copy of it, it's I think we've got a lot of unique information in here that you won't get anywhere else unless it's been copied from here. For example, we show the theatrical sources of Pamela's artwork and art style, as she was a theatrical designer. And I think I'd like to use this video to really stress this idea of seeing the landscape in the back of the cards as being intrinsic to the design of the cards themselves, particularly as when you lay out the cards in a reading, you know you're looking at one story, you know you're looking at one layout, one arrangement of the same landscape. And when you're reading for yourself or reading for a client, always realize and use the landscape in the background to remind yourself that you're looking at one story, that person's whole life, everything that is connected with them, everything that they are connected to. And no matter how the cards are laid out, they're not just random images. There are connections that go on in the background all of the time, and it's up to us to use the cards to be reminded of what's in the foreground of that universal, unchanging, everlasting background, to look at that arrangement of cards and say, at the moment it looks like this, and to tell that person the story of their dream, of their divination, that is connected. It is there, always present, of this universal connection that we see in the ever-changing and yet ever-remaining, ever consistent, ever congruent, ever comprehensive background that we see in Pamela's cards. So the next time you do a reading, perhaps see a little bit beyond the foreground and take a look into the background as well, and use it as a reminder that you are seeing one story. So I hope you found this of interest, and I look forward to seeing you in the Tarot Association or our Facebook group, Tarot Professionals, where we discuss this sort of thing every day, every month, every week, every year. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.